I am the son of an artist and a psychologist. I grew up in New York City and upstate New York, and I was always encouraged by my parents to explore the things that I was interested in, to try the things that I was curious about. And somewhere around my early 20s, that led into a career in theater. In the early 1990s in San Francisco, theater was a magnificent industry. There was a large number of small theaters. And I cut my teeth in San Francisco working in rigging and scenic painting and set construction, design, performance, and over a few years I got a bit of a reputation for being able to solve uncommon problems in the theater, and that led to a career in the film industry. I actually started in television commercials, so my partner from Mythbusters, Jamie Heineman, ran a small special effects shop called Colossal Pictures, and Jamie heard about me from some of my colleagues in the theater industry and called me up and said, I hear you have some skill in this. Will you please come in and show me what you can do? And I ended up working for Jamie over about 4 years on maybe 100 or 150 separate commercials. Clients like Coca-Cola, Dow Corning, Hershey's, Coca-Cola, I said. And I ended up leaving commercial special effects to go work in the toy industry. I've had about 16 different careers. I worked in the toy industry for a couple of years, and then the problem I had with the toy industry was that I was management, which meant I was making a lot of phone calls and filling out a lot of calendars, but I was not making anything with my hands, and I found this was debilitating to me. And so I quit the toy job. I went back into special effects, and I got up to George Lucas's effects company, Industrial Light and Magic. And over several years there, I worked on Star Wars Episodes 1 and 2, films like Space Cowboys, Galaxy Quest, and then finished my time in special effects on the Matrix films when Jamie called me. And we had, although I was not working for him, we had remained in touch. And he called me in the spring of 2002 and said, I just got this call from the Discovery Channel, and they would like to do this show called Mythbusters. And they asked me for a demo reel. And I don't know that I'd be very good at hosting a show like this, but maybe together we could make a demo reel. Maybe we could pitch it together. And so we did. And what he didn't realize was that I had just been learning digital filmmaking. I had done a job in early 2002 that had been very lucrative, and for the first time in my adult life I'd been able to afford a brand new laptop computer. And the one that I invested in was the first computer devoted to digital video editing. And I had purchased a camera, and I had started making some little films just to teach myself how to edit, how to shoot, how to make a small film. And so I went into Jamie's shop. We shot a small demo reel for about 2 hours. I cut it into a 14-minute piece, which we sent to Discovery. And they showed up 3 weeks later, where we filmed the pilots of Mythbusters. And then we never stopped filming for 14 years. We filmed until the end, 13 and a half years. We filmed to the end of 2015. It was an unparalleled experience. Over 14 years, we made 280 hours of television. We conducted over 2,000 separate experiments, used 85 miles of duct tape. And we wrapped in 2015, as I said. Over the last 2 years, I've been concentrating primarily on my website, testit.com, where I make things, I collaborate with other makers, I promote other wonderful artisans and creators. I travel around to different Comic-Cons. And then earlier this year, I started production on a new spin-off of Mythbusters called Mythbusters Junior. And that is, we spent this summer from June to August filming this with 6 amazing kids from all across America, 3 boys, 3 girls. And I'm madly in love with all of these kids. It was one of the most creatively satisfying things I've ever done. There you go, there's my whole life story. Each time I had a career, I knew what I was doing. I'm working in commercials, I'm working in theater, I'm working in toys. On Mythbusters, I went through several different iterations of wondering what I was doing, what my job was. At first I thought I was hired to talk on camera, and then I realized it was important that I'm also building things and communicating the process of building and problem solving on camera. And then after a couple of years I was being interviewed by an American scientist and science communicator, Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I was watching, he was interviewing me, but I was watching him and I was thinking, look at this man, he's amazing. He's a science communicator. He wants to tell the world about how great science is. And then I realized, oh, I do that too. I thought, okay, I'm a science communicator. And then a couple of years later, I realized that none of those were the complete truth, that all that I have ever done for a living was to tell stories. And what I mean is, when I was working in special effects, if I am taking a spaceship and I am gluing details on it to make it look like a spaceship, this is a fictional universe. No one makes these things, but I'm putting details on. Those details don't work visually unless they tell a story. And that story is internal, it's my story. But unless I'm honest about it and unless I understand it, my work doesn't actually communicate on camera. And Mythbusters was just an extended way of telling stories about exploring the world. And those to me are the two things that human beings do. We explore and we tell stories about what we find when we explore. And so I still don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. I may have 4 more careers from here. I may have a dozen, but they will all be versions of doing the same thing, which is exploring and telling stories. I think we're doing a great job with exploration. I'm not sure we're doing such a good job with telling stories. I'm talking as humans, as a global culture. I think that in my country, in America, I think one of the great difficulties we are having is being able to hear each other's stories. It's easy to tell your story. It's very hard to hear someone else's experience. And that to me is right now the biggest problem we have culturally. Well, I know that in Saudi culture the arts are very, very important. And as an artist, I look for my inspiration. I look hard for my inspiration. And I find it in my obsessions. I find it in the things that I can't not pay attention to. And so the story that I'm telling on stage tonight is a story of just how far down the rabbit hole I go to investigate and to figure out the truth of something that I want to explore. One of my in my personal life, one of my pastimes is I find objects that I look for objects that I find compelling and I make them. And in that replication, I am taking a story, an external narrative that is important to me, and I'm internalizing it. I'm eating it. I am recapitulating it. And the level of detail the level of exploration that I go to do that is in some ways extreme. And so tonight I'll tell a story about investigating a prop from Stanley Kubrick, the director Stanley Kubrick's collection, and just how deeply I want to and desire to explore an object that's important to me. I am always interested in finding and meeting and talking to and collaborating with other creators, other artists. For me, my children, I have twin boys, they are 19 now, they have both left the house. I turned 50 a couple of years ago, and while 50 is just an age, it is also really, it's an interesting number, and I feel incumbent on me to start passing on everything that I know, and also to listen. And so to me, when I come to a place that's a culture that I'm not familiar with, it's an opportunity to learn, and absolutely, I'd love to come back here and spend more time and be able to learn more about the culture and collaborate with people. Curiosity is absolutely transferable. That's one of the most wonderful things about it. When I was a kid, I visited, my father, like I said, was an artist, and he had a lot of friends who were artists, and I tagged along with him to lots of different places. And I visited a friend of his who was a beautiful sculptor, and he was making this tree out of wood, and he had handmade every leaf. And I remember being amazed that someone spent so much time carving every single leaf. And then later on in the man's house, he had a beautiful mask from Africa. And it was one of these masks that had been made out of an old oil can with marbles for eyes, but it was incredibly evocative. And I was 10 years old, and I remember being fascinated by this mask. And at 10, I didn't know how to verbally appreciate it. So I said, "Where do you get one of these?" And he said, I picked it up in my travels. And then as my dad and I were leaving, we were pulling out of the driveway, and he came running down the driveway, and he gave me the mask. And this stands out for me as a key moment in my life, because he saw the enthusiasm in me, and he rewarded it with generosity. To me, that's the key to being a person. So I think that's why I want to keep telling the story of my obsessions. My hobby is a useless hobby. I'm not helping mankind by replicating these objects that I find compelling, but I do think that I am contributing to my culture by talking about it. Tell your story and listen to other people's stories. There's nothing more important that you can do as a person than do that. I think most of the difficulty we have as humans in our interpersonal relationships and in our culture and our society is not being able to listen to each other. I think places like Ithra are really wonderful and important. I saw pictures of the facility before I came here, and I spotted it from the road miles before we got here. Its architecture, just the shape of the building, communicates to the world something really interesting is happening here, and that if you come here, you will see something you don't expect. I appreciate the architecture. I appreciate the attention to detail and the beautiful details all over this place. They communicate exactly that kind of curiosity and sense of wonder. I feel incredibly lucky to be invited to be here. My life at times feels like a fantasy, that I get to make the things that I make and collaborate with the people that I love and promote the art and passion and curiosity of other people is a great gift, and it feels like the right path, and I'm very grateful for that.